Officer led the way, climbing the staircase with caution, his flashlight beams sweeping across the upper landing. Reaching the balcony, he carefully leaned over the railing to get a view of the room below. The sight that met him stopped him cold. A shotgun was resting on the couch in plain view, and the surrounding area showed signs that some kind of struggle. Within moments, the search team moved toward the first floor to investigate further. It was there, in the hallway that connected the living room to the foyer near the master bedroom, that they made the heartbreaking discovery. Rachel's body was found lying motionless. Dr. Rachel Maidens was not just successful. She was one of those rare people whose presence seemed to light up every room she entered. At only 34 years old, she had already built a reputation as both a gifted medical professional and a charismatic member of her community. Rachel was known for her striking looks: long blonde hair, a bright smile, and a graceful, athletic figure. But her true strength lay in her intellect and determination. She combined a sharp, analytical mind with a warm and approachable personality, which made patients and colleagues alike gravitate toward her. Rachel had chosen to specialize in orthodontics, a field that demands patience, precision, and a deep understanding of both science and art. She founded and operated her own private practice in the Brentwood business district of Maryland Farms, a location known for its upscale offices and thriving medical community. Her clinic quickly became one of the most sought-after orthodontic centers in the area. Families trusted Rachel not only for her technical expertise but also for the compassion she showed each patient, treating them as individuals rather than just appointments on a schedule. Outside of work, Rachel's world revolved around her 2-year-old daughter, Natalie. Friends often described Rachel as a deeply devoted mother, who seemed to thrive on balancing the challenges of running a business with raising a child. She loved spending afternoons taking Natalie to parks, reading to her before bed, and capturing small everyday moments on camera so she could treasure them forever. Rachel's path to success had been paved with hard work and an outstanding education. She began at the highly regarded Father Ryan Catholic School in Nashville, where she excelled both academically and socially. She was then accepted into Birmingham Southern College in Alabama, an institution known for its rigorous programs and competitive admission standards. During her years there, Rachel didn't just focus on academics. She became a standout athlete as a star member of the women's tennis team, earning top athletic honors while also maintaining one of the highest grade point averages in her class. Her dedication and brilliance earned her a bachelor's degree in biology and psychology, which she graduated with magna cum laude honors, as well as one of the coveted Dazer scholarships, awarded only to the most promising students. After Birmingham Southern, Rachel was accepted into the University of Florida Dental School, where she once again proved she was a natural leader. She was elected class president by her peers, praised for her ability to bring students together and represent their needs. She was actively involved in community outreach programs, volunteering to provide free dental care to underprivileged children, and participating in health education initiatives. Upon completing her Doctor of Dental Surgery degree, Rachel continued her education by entering the highly competitive orthodontics residency program at the Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. Her residency years were intense, but Rachel thrived under pressure, sharpening her skills and gaining invaluable experience treating complex pediatric cases. By the time she returned to Tennessee to open her own clinic, she had already built a reputation for excellence in the field. Her professional achievements didn't stop there. Rachel contributed articles to respected dental journals, sharing insights on innovative treatment methods, and was frequently invited to speak at dental conferences, where she inspired other young doctors with her story. To many, she embodied the perfect example of a modern professional woman: successful, intelligent, kind, and deeply committed to both her work and her family. But behind this picture of success, Rachel had endured significant hardship early in her life. At the beginning of her adult journey, she faced an event that deeply affected her and her family. On December 3, 2003, while Rachel was still a college student, her family was shaken by a dramatic and highly publicized incident. Her father, Dr. Richard, a well-respected pharmacist in their community, was taken into custody by federal agents following an investigation. The authorities accused him of distributing prescription pain medication illegally. This was a devastating blow to the entire Maidens family. Dr. Richard had been seen as a pillar of integrity in their neighborhood, known for his commitment to his patients and his generosity. The arrest left Rachel shocked and heartbroken. She was forced to navigate not only the emotional turmoil that followed, but also the public scrutiny that came with such a case. Friends of the family recalled that Rachel showed remarkable resilience during this time, continuing her studies and refusing to let the tragedy derail her ambitions. Instead, she used the experience as motivation to keep pushing forward, determined to create a future that would make her family proud despite the hardship they were facing. In addition to the initial accusations, investigators claimed that Richard had allegedly been involved in the illegal sale of prescription medication directly from his own home. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community, as Dr. Richard had been considered a trusted professional and a man of integrity for many years. Neighbors were stunned, unable to reconcile the image of the kind, dependable pharmacist they knew with the man federal agents had just led away in handcuffs. However, this case never went before a judge or jury. Just 2 days after his arrest, tragedy struck again. Rachel's father unexpectedly passed away. It was widely believed that his death was linked to the overwhelming stress and humiliation he experienced following the arrest. Those who knew him said that the shame of the allegations, combined with the fear of facing a lengthy legal battle, placed an unbearable strain on his heart. His sudden passing left the family reeling, not only grieving the loss of a beloved husband and father, but also grappling with the heavy cloud of suspicion that now hung over them. Yet, the nightmare for the Frisbee family was only beginning. In the days that followed, Nashville police froze the family's bank accounts, not just Richard's, but also those belonging to Rachel, her mother Betty, and her brother. Overnight, they found themselves unable to access their own money, forced to live under the shadow of a lengthy investigation. Although none of them were ever formally charged, they were treated as if they might have been involved in Richard's alleged crimes, and the emotional weight of that was crushing. The investigation dragged on for several years, forcing the family to live in a state of uncertainty and financial struggle. Ultimately, Rachel and her loved ones were cleared of any wrongdoing, and the case against Richard was closed. But the damage had been done. They had been forced to watch their reputations questioned and their finances depleted. Rachel's mother eventually received $155,000 in compensation from the police, a gesture meant to repair the financial harm caused by the investigation. Yet, no amount of money could undo the trauma they had endured. Emotional wounds remained. Wounds that shaped the way Rachel saw the world for the rest of her life. It is difficult to imagine the depth of pain Rachel must have carried, but what is certain is that she did not allow the tragedy to define her future. Instead of giving up, she chose to double down on her studies and push forward with even greater determination. Friends and classmates later recalled how she seemed driven by an almost unshakable resolve, a determination to become the very best at whatever she pursued. It is possible that this ambition was not just about professional success, but was also a way of protecting herself, of creating a stable and secure future for herself and the family she hoped to build. Rachel had faced the loss of a parent, public scandal, and near financial ruin before she had even graduated, and yet she emerged from this storm stronger than before. She not only completed her education but excelled, earning her professional degrees, opening her own practice, and achieving a level of success that few in her field could match. It was as though she had willed herself to transform pain into purpose. For a time, life seemed to be rewarding her perseverance. Rachel married Randolph "Randy" Carey Maidens, a man who at first appeared to share her ambitions and values. Randy was born in St. Louis, Missouri, to Charles and Barbara Maidens, but spent much of his childhood in Georgia. He graduated from Wheeler High School in Marietta before going on to study at the prestigious Georgia Tech, one of the country's leading technological universities. By the time he married Rachel, he was working as a sales manager at a Brentwood-based pharmaceutical company that focused on oncology research, a respectable and lucrative career. However, as with many stories of outwardly perfect lives, trouble was brewing beneath the surface. Rumors began to circulate that Randy was no longer employed at the company, though there was no official confirmation from management. The firm reportedly declined to comment publicly on the situation, which only fueled speculation. Whatever the truth, what became clear in the months leading up to the tragedy was that Randy's behavior had changed dramatically. About 3 months before Rachel's death, Randy began showing signs of a serious downward spiral. Friends and acquaintances observed that he was drinking heavily, and his behavior was becoming erratic. One alarming incident occurred in January, when patrons at a local restaurant reported that Randy had arrived in an extremely intoxicated state, so much so that he frightened staff and customers. The scene became chaotic enough that one of the employees felt compelled to call the police. She later explained that she was too scared to serve him alcohol, but also worried about letting him leave in such a condition. While waiting for police to arrive, something even more concerning happened. The employee noticed that when Randy stood up, several items fell from his pocket, including what she described as a shotgun shell and a large bottle. This discovery left her terrified. She phoned 911 again, urgently updating dispatch about what she had just seen. When police arrived, they searched Randy's vehicle and discovered a shotgun inside the cabin. Despite this, officers chose not to arrest him. Instead, they allowed Randy to call his wife, Rachel, to come pick him up and take him home. Witnesses reported that Randy seemed reluctant to involve her, asking the waitress repeatedly not to contact his wife because he feared she would be angry with him. It was a revealing moment, one that suggested Rachel had likely been frustrated by his behavior for some time. It is impossible to know the exact dynamic of their marriage, but these incidents paint a picture of a household under strain. And yet, because Randy came from a well-off background and had no prior criminal history, the situation was ultimately resolved without an arrest or further legal consequences. Then, just a few months later, the situation took a far darker turn. On April 21, 2013, Rachel's mother, Betty Frisbee, made a desperate call to the Brentwood police. She asked them to immediately check on her daughter's home, indicating that she feared something was terribly wrong. Betty Frisbee's call to the police was not made lightly. In fact, according to several reports, she was deeply alarmed during her phone conversation with Randy and felt that the situation had escalated beyond what she could safely handle. Some accounts suggest that Betty gave her son-in-law a direct ultimatum. She allegedly told him that if he did not put Rachel on the phone within 10 minutes, she would involve law enforcement. The exact details of what Betty heard that night have never been fully released to the public, but it is widely believed that Randy had already taken Rachel's life by the time he spoke to her. Just imagining that phone call is chilling. If this theory is true, one can only guess what Randy must have said that compelled Betty to act so quickly and decisively. Perhaps his tone, his words, or his refusal to let Rachel speak convinced her that something horrific had already happened. Whatever the case, Betty immediately called Brentwood police and asked them to perform a welfare check. Within minutes, patrol officers arrived at the maiden's sprawling home. When they knocked on the door, there was no answer. The house was eerily quiet. Officers noticed that every curtain and blind in the house had been drawn tightly shut, making it impossible to see inside. This added to the sense of foreboding. Something was clearly wrong. Fortunately, the garage door was open, giving the officers lawful access to the residence. With caution, they entered and began calling out both Randy's and Rachel's names. There was still no response. The atmosphere inside the home was heavy and unnerving. The officers moved from room to room, their voices echoing through the hallways, until suddenly they heard a faint sound that drew their attention toward the Great Hall. Officer Austin Kern climbed the staircase and looked over the balcony railing into the open space below. What he saw froze him in place. A shotgun lying on the couch, and nearby, what appeared to be evidence of a violent struggle. Moments later, Rachel's body was discovered on the first floor, lying motionless in the hallway that connected the living room to the foyer, leading to the master bedroom. Despite immediate checks, she showed no signs of life. The scene was heartbreaking. Rachel, who had built such a promising life, now lay at the center of a crime scene inside the home she had shared with her husband and child. A forensic inspection of the house revealed even more disturbing details. Investigators found that someone had attempted to clean up the scene before the police arrived. There were visible traces that the walls and floor had been scrubbed, and a strong smell of bleach still hung in the air. Despite these efforts, unmistakable crimson stains remained, silently telling the story of what had occurred. But Randy himself was nowhere to be found. The discovery of Rachel's body triggered an urgent manhunt. Brentwood police called in additional units, including special response teams, K-9 units, and even helicopters. That night, the usually quiet and upscale neighborhood transformed into something resembling the set of a tense Hollywood thriller. Residents watched from behind locked doors as police vehicles lined the streets, and searchlights swept through nearby wooded areas. Authorities made it clear that they considered Randy to be armed and potentially dangerous. Brentwood Police Chief Jeff Hughes gave a press briefing, characterizing Randy as unstable and urging the public to remain cautious. As investigators combed through the house, they quickly discovered evidence that shed light on Randy's state of mind in the hours before he vanished. On the kitchen table, they found a handwritten note, a lengthy message from Randy. In it, he offered a detailed apology and declared his love for Rachel, but he also admitted that he had done something terrible. Though he never explicitly stated what that act was, the implication was clear. The note took on a defensive tone in places. Randy thanked Rachel's family for the years they had shared, but then went on to blame Rachel for much of his unhappiness. He wrote that living with her had been unbearable, claiming that for the past 6 years he had endured constant yelling, arguments over minor issues, and humiliation. He even referenced the fact that Rachel had been married twice before, suggesting that he now understood why her previous marriages had ended. According to Randy, their most recent argument had been the breaking point, the last straw that led him to do what he had done. Chillingly, Randy expressed a desire to take custody of their daughter and raise her with the help of Rachel's relatives, seemingly imagining a future for himself after the crime. Investigators also uncovered evidence that Randy had been preparing to run. In the trunk of his car, police discovered approximately $87,000 in cash, stuffed haphazardly into a large bag. An additional $9,000 was found inside the house. This was a significant amount of money, suggesting that Randy may have been planning to disappear and start over somewhere else. Curiously, despite having hours of lead time, Randy never fled the area. With so much cash on hand, he could have traveled far from Tennessee before law enforcement mobilized. Instead, he stayed close to the house. Investigators later learned through phone records that Randy had placed a call to a high-profile Nashville criminal defense attorney, David Wren, shortly after the incident. The content of their conversation is unknown, but the fact that Randy sought legal counsel indicates he was fully aware of the severity of his situation. Ultimately, Randy chose not to run. Instead, he hid in the wooded area behind his home, remaining there for nearly 12 hours as police scoured the neighborhood. Whether his decision to stay was the result of panic, exhaustion, or a sudden change of heart will never be known. Finally, after a long night of evasion, Randy emerged from the dense greenery at dawn. Witnesses reported that he looked exhausted, disheveled, and emotionally drained. He walked toward the officers with his hands raised in surrender. There was no confrontation. Randy was taken into custody peacefully, bringing an end to one of the most intense manhunts the quiet Brentwood community had ever seen. While police were conducting a detailed forensic investigation inside the maiden's residence, the search for Randy intensified across the quiet, gated community. Brentwood's affluent neighborhood, usually peaceful and calm, suddenly became a hive of activity. Police officers and detectives went door to door, questioning neighbors, checking security camera recordings, and gathering every possible clue about Randy's movements after the crime. Soon, several residents came forward with unnerving accounts. In the early hours of the morning, multiple people reported hearing knocking on their doors, and even the sound of someone trying to open them. Some mentioned that they had seen a figure moving from house to house, attempting to get into garages or side entrances. At first, neighbors thought it might have been a prowler or a random intruder. But when police reviewed nearby security cameras, they confirmed the shocking truth. It was Randy Maidens himself. What exactly he had been trying to do remains unknown. Some investigators speculated that he might have been searching for a place to hide from law enforcement or simply looking for a sympathetic neighbor who might let him in. Others suggested he might have been in a confused or panicked state, wandering aimlessly in the aftermath of what had happened inside his own home. Whatever the reason, the residents were terrified at the idea of opening their doors to an unstable man who, according to the latest police bulletins, could be armed and dangerous. After Randy was located and taken into custody, the legal process moved quickly. Authorities formally charged him with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence, two of the most serious charges under Tennessee law. A conviction on the murder charge alone could have meant a death sentence, or, at the very least, life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole. Initially, Randy was held in the county jail with bail set at an extraordinary $2.5 million, a figure intended to reflect both the severity of the crime and the risk that he might attempt to flee. Almost immediately, Randy's legal team began working to secure a reduction of bail, arguing that he was not a flight risk. They pointed out that after the crime, Randy had several hours during which he could have easily left town, even the state. But he did not. Instead, he remained near his property, ultimately surrendering peacefully to the police. In June 2013, their arguments convinced the court to lower the bail from $2.5 million to $750,000. This dramatic reduction meant that Randy was able to post bond and walk free while awaiting trial. It is not entirely clear where he lived during this period, nor how he spent his time, but court records and media reports make one thing clear: Randy was far from staying out of trouble. In December of that same year, Randy was arrested again, this time for a bizarre incident in another Nashville suburb, the Avery Park complex in Bellew. According to reports, Randy was going door to door in an apartment building, knocking repeatedly and insisting that residents let him inside. Disturbingly, one witness told police that Randy had allegedly identified himself as a police officer while demanding entry, something he had no legal right to do. When law enforcement officers arrived at the scene, they found Randy visibly intoxicated. Despite the fact that he was already out on bail for first-degree murder, he was charged only with public intoxication, a misdemeanor offense. The very next day, Randy was released on bail yet again. This decision sparked outrage among some members of the community who could not understand how a man awaiting trial for such a serious crime could continue to be released despite repeated arrests. This time, however, Prosecutor Kim Helper filed a motion to revoke Randy's bond entirely, arguing that his behavior clearly violated the conditions of his release and showed that he was a continuing risk. The court agreed, and Randy was returned to custody, where he would remain until his trial date. But troubling reports about Randy's past did not stop surfacing. Neighbor Cynthia Rosenblum later told reporters that she had previously seen Randy wandering through the woods near their homes while wearing a mask. When she and her husband asked what he was doing, Randy, who appeared intoxicated, mumbled something about walking the dogs and claimed he had simply gotten lost. The incident had unsettled the couple at the time, but no official action was taken. There were other red flags as well. In March, just a month before the tragedy, Randy had been charged with trespassing in Florida. Details about this case were never made public, as it was closed following his arrest for murder. But investigators believed that such behavior could have been an early warning sign of his unraveling mental state. Taken together, these incidents painted a picture of a man who had been spiraling out of control for months, if not years, before the fatal night. Finally, after more than a year of legal maneuvering, Randy's trial was scheduled for September 29, 2014. The case was expected to attract significant public attention, with prosecutors prepared to pursue the maximum possible penalty. However, just 2 weeks before the trial date, there was a dramatic development. Randy and his defense team reached a plea agreement with prosecutors, in exchange for pleading guilty to a lesser charge of second-degree murder, as well as child neglect related to the danger posed to his young daughter that night. The state agreed to reduce the potential sentence. Instead of facing life in prison or worse, Randy was sentenced to 25 years behind bars.